In this video, we're going to be talking about free fall motion concepts. The meaning free fall just means an object that's moving only under the influence of gravity. So it's basically something that's moving around through the air but isn't actually affected by the air resistance itself. One of the most important things to recognize is that force of gravity, which we'll call Fg, causes an acceleration of negative 9.8 meters per second squared. Now, just to simplify that a little bit and make it easier to explain conceptually, I'm going to round that off to negative 10 meters per second squared. Now, what that means is that as the object is moving, you are subtracting 10 meters per second for every second that it's flying through the air. Now, say for example, it's moving up initially at 30 meters per second. That means that every second you're rising, you're subtracting 10 meters per second off of that initial velocity, which would take you to 20 to 10 and then to 0 meters per second at the very peak of its flight. We call that the instantaneous velocity because it just basically taps that 0 meters per second at the very, very top. Now, when you're on your way back down, you continue to subtract 10 meters per second every second, and that would take you to negative 10 meters per second, negative 20, and then when you get to the very bottom, you have the same exact speed that you started with, but a different velocity, because velocity considers the direction, so it is negative 30 meters per second at the end. So when something is rising, its velocity is always positive. Now, if you have something rising up and the force of gravity is pulling down, those aren't working in the same direction. So you'll always have a positive velocity, and as it's rising, it's always going to be slowing down the entire time it's rising. It's a common misconception that the ball might speed up for a little bit and then start to slow down. The only time it would speed up, though, is when it's in contact with that soccer player's foot. So once it's in contact with the foot, it is able to speed up, and then as soon as it leaves the foot and is only under the influence of gravity, it is slowing down the entire time it's rising until it hits zero. As it starts falling, because it's moving down and force of gravity is pulling down, those are working together. Therefore, it is speeding up the entire time it is falling, and all of those velocities are negative. Okay, and then again, once you reach the bottom here, it's going to hit that same 30 meters per second, but it's negative. The negative is just showing that it is falling down. Okay, so that basically sums up all of our main concepts. One, force of gravity is pulling down. Velocities are always positive as it rises, but those positive velocities are always decreasing until it hits zero at the very peak. And then as it's moving down, it is always negative. And that entire time it is speeding up, so it's becoming a greater and greater negative number. And then it'll reach the same exact speed as its initial velocity once it returns back to its initial height. So that pretty much sums up all of our main concepts. Thank you for watching and listening.